Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The first official episode of Hero Ball. What better way to kick it off? A very special guest, baby feet, Nick Hendricks, the recent $100 million man, one of the best edge rushers in the National Football League. Nick Bonitto, thanks for coming on. All right, so as of a couple weeks ago, the price has really went up. Allow me to be the first to congratulate you. 4-year, $120 million deal. This past offseason, contract negotiations were a very big topic of discussion. We saw a couple guys at your position, actually, some very public contract negotiations. What are contract negotiations from your perspective? How involved were you? How much of it is just your agent talking about it? Because, again, a lot of us casual fans have been very interested in what's going on behind the scenes when you're talking about all these euros, right? So what goes on during those contract negotiations and how involved are you?
Yeah, so I mean, basically, at least from my perspective and my experience with it, I kind of was involved like probably like 20% of it. The rest of it was kind of just like my agent and the GM and the contract guy just going after it and, just trying to find numbers. And it was a long process. It was kind of something that started like, right as the season ended, like when we got into that spring period, and then like kind of kept going throughout like OTAs and fall camp and stuff like that. So it was kind of a long process for sure. But I mean, just finally being able for like both sides to just come to an agreement, what my future can look like here, and that's kind of what it was.
Nito, and also like on that, obviously with that you don't like without getting into numbers and things like that, but when that stuff is going on and guys are signing like the Parsons and these guys that the edge rushers that were signing their deals at the time, did that kind of help like ignite talks more, like get talks going? Did your agent kind of like say, look, oh, this guy just signed a deal here, or is it kind of more just like the team takes it at their time and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of, different things, like different situations. Like, so specifically, like the Parsons thing, when that happened, like my agent was like all over. He's like, not necessarily that it could help my number, but knowing that we need to have some type of sense of urgency because with the market going up like that, if I were to have another good year, this year, the price is only going to keep going up and up. Instead of paying a certain number now, you're going to have to pay more later and stuff like that. So.
You're talking about the timeline. Was it very important for you to get it done like before the season started so that you're not worrying about it while you're playing?
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like that's where like me and the Broncos kind of like we're in agreement with that. Is like we wanted to get it done before the season. We wanted to, just have no worries going into the season on both sides. So I mean, they did a good job, just keeping me, in communications through the whole time, talking to my agent, making sure like we were never, left out and stuff like that. So just always keeping us in the loop and just making sure that they knew I was a priority was like a big thing for sure.
So we'll get back to you in a little bit. Justin and I were just talking this past week, obviously about as brutal of a loss as you can get, but this year, so we're starting off 1-1, a much different. Well, really, since you've been in Denver, expectations have really been a roller coaster, right? You came in your rookie year, you guys had just gotten Russ. You were a Super Bowl contender. Since then, it's been a little bit back and forth in terms of preseason expectations. Last season, you were kind of predicted to be one of the worst teams in the league. You end up going on a great run, you make the playoffs, and you come into this year with all these expectations. So as a team, what is that like, instead of being this underdog mentality? Now you got now you're projected as this Super Bowl, contender, a sleeper pick. So what's like different in the offseason coming into a year, with these high expectations now that you have in Denver?
Yeah, just like you said, I mean, obviously the expectations are way higher this year, with the season that we had and then, as well as the additions that we brought in and brought back, from the team last year. So, I mean, expectations are higher this year. Obviously, last week's loss sucked. I mean, I feel like, we had a chance to win that game at the end and just didn't quite make enough plays or mental mistakes to overcome, what eventually happened. But I mean, just gonna keep going. We have another good opponent this week, so we just got to keep going.
So I'm trying not to fangirl out because you are one of my favorite players. So I'm keeping the stoic look. You wouldn't even tell. But When looking at your career, man, because it's really fascinating, you start out, you're a second round pick, the first pick for Denver that year. So you obviously come in with expectations. I know you were banged up a little bit at the beginning of your rookie year, but you go from being like a rotational guy your rookie year. And, you see guys take big leaps in the NFL, right? But you very rarely see it happen twice. You go from being like a one sack rotational guy. Obviously, you had Chubb and some other good players in the room that year. You go from that to being an 8-sack guy your second year. And then last year, you take a massive leap. Then you had 13 and a half sacks, second team All Pro, Pro Bowler. You get this big contract. Let's go back to your rookie year, right? I've heard you speak a little bit about this, but I know you have to have supreme confidence as a football player. During that season, and obviously it wasn't going well for the team either, like, is it hard to keep that confidence? Do you ever question, like your ability? You question yourself during that time when you're not seeing the results you want.
No, yeah, 100%. I definitely had some like doubts for sure my rookie year, just like not being able to play as much as I wanted or get the opportunities, and then even when I do, get in the game, it's not what I was expecting or the results I've wanted. So I'm like, it kind of made me question myself as a player a little bit, but kind of having the vets that I did to keep me going and keep me working hard and to keep believing in myself. And going into that next year, man, it did wonders for me. Obviously going from 1 to 8 sacks, which was pretty crazy. Just being able to continuously trying to get better and continuously have that confidence that I can be one of those guys in the league.
Nito, yeah, I was just gonna go back on that and say, like, obviously I've seen your growth and within the last couple of years and things like that, but it's like, what you talk about that 1 to 8 season, you know what I mean, going from 1 to 8. What was it that kind of took your game to another level? Would you say in your career, was it more physical? Was it more mental? Was it, you know what I mean, learning the defense?
Yeah, I would say it was just mostly just mental. Being able to kind of take, habits from like the older players on the team and, guys that, were making plays and kind of putting it into my routine, seeing how I can get better. Whether that was in the weight room or, most importantly, which helped me a lot was the film sessions and just being able to know what I'm looking at, knowing what's coming at me and, being comfortable and just, playing way faster out there. Those that kind of things kind of helped me out when it came to film and just, learning how to make plays.
So what is that next leap for you, man? If we go up, 1, 8, 13 and a half, like what are your personal, I know you're obviously a team guy, but like what would you say your personal goals are? Like what is the next step for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it's just, I mean, it sounds kind of like, simple, but I mean, yeah, I just want to be better than last year, honestly. Whether it's in the run game, in the pass game and coverage, just being able to, be a guy that can do a lot of things for the defense, which is kind of needed. Coach asks us to drop a lot. He asks us to rush, play the run. So, just being able to be, a perfectionist and all those things is kind of my biggest goal for this year for sure.
What position do you play?
I play outside linebacker, but I mean, with how BJ draws everything up, he kind of gotta be positionless. I mean, there are packages where we'll have an outside backer come in and play like an inside backer position, having to drop and cover running backs and do all these things. You also got to be able to rush off the edge and just do a lot of different things. So, but outside linebacker for sure.
I got into an argument with someone about this the other day because I think edge is kind of its own position, right? What is the difference between an edge and a defensive end? You
I
should
mean,
be
I
an
think
expert on this, right?
yeah, I feel like edge and defensive end are more kind of the same things, whether like kind of separated from like an outside linebacker. I feel like those edge guys, I mean, which I can be considered one because most of the time we're rushing off the edge. But I mean, when I think of edge, I think of guys like the Miles Garrett's, the 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 Max Crosby's of the world, Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson's. Those guys are just pinning their ears back every play, rushing the passer. Where more of the outside linebacker is kind of like me, Jonathan Cooper, Khalil Mack, those types where, we're asked to do a lot more in those defenses than just rush the passer.
So a lot of people ask, and maybe I could ask you later about like, a welcome to the NFL moment. That's all Paul George asks on his podcast, but we do things differently around here. I don't really care about that. What was your like I'm him moment. Like, again, maybe in your second year or maybe in your rookie year, you make a play and you're like, all right, like, I'm that guy. Like, I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, did you have a moment like that? Was it one specific moment? Did it happen over like one game where you're like, I think I might have figured this out? Or did you have a moment like that?
Yeah, I would probably say it was my second year against the Bears. We were on the road, and I don't think we won a game at that point. And I had like 3 sacks that game. It was like a forced fumble that led to a touchdown. And then honestly, that game was probably where like, okay, like I knew I was good before, but like I can actually really like do this and actually become something if I actually just kept working and doing the things I needed to do. Because that was probably the game where I saw the most results out of myself. So that was probably be the game for sure.
Was that just the pressure of switching from number 42, which is a terrible number, to 15? Did you just kind of feel like, you needed to up your play a little bit if you're going to wear that type of number?
Nah, 100%. Like, that 42 was bringing me down. That 15 just kind of gives you a little bit more confidence, energy about
Yeah.
yourself. So, I mean, the number switch was definitely needed.
Respectfully to all players wearing 40, 40 is a great number
Yeah,
as
no.
well.
Hey,
But
thank you, thank you.
I think you're right. You see that right in the background, that big 40 there. But okay, so actually we kind of were talking about this earlier with like, the changes you made in between seasons. Was it physical? Was it more mental? So in my opinion, you have the best get off, the best first step in football. Um, has that always been in your bag? Obviously, it must be in some way, but like, is that something you developed? So when I was in school, I was kind of used as the example of like, this is like what not to look like. This is the slowest get off we've ever seen. And I would love if you could go back in time and tell like the 2018 version of myself, what I'm supposed to do so Coach Cohen stops calling me these words that I had never even heard before, right? So what is the key to a great get off? I know that's an oversimplification, but from in your perspective, how do you work on that? And how are you so fucking fast off the ball is what I'm trying to ask you.
I mean, it kind of always just been like a thing for me. I was always like that skinny kid. I played like multiple positions in high school, so like I was always just skinny playing whatever, and then they would just start asking me to come off, rush off the edge, and naturally I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought if you just get off the ball as fast as you could, that's a way to beat tackles around the edge. So I mean that's kind of where it all started, but then just like actually like looking and fine tuning, like as I'm like maturing as a player and getting older. Just knowing the cadences, having the rhythm of the snap counts, being able to jump the snaps, and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it all just kind of blended in together to be a good get at my get off for real.
He also played at Oklahoma. Hebs. They tend to play a lot of defensive snaps every week. A lot of points are put up in those games. So
A lot of
getting the
sacks are being made.
getting those get off reps. In the Red River games where it's 75-74. Like
Yeah, I was going to say it's like you had 3 sacks against Texas Tech. The final score is 64-58. It's like what did they do?
We don't
Actually,
like
what?
that's the old Big 12, man. That narrative's there. Back in
Well,
my
now
day, you
with
can put
Oklahoma being the SEC, you probably would have came up and joined us at Wake. I don't know. Some people I don't know. It takes a different guy to be in the SEC.
Wake
Not that I would know, but speaking of sacks, are sacks an overrated stat?
to a certain extent. I mean, it just depends. I mean, I feel like sacks, like they're very important to the game because obviously, if you're getting sacks, you're making plays in the game, you're helping the defense out. But it just depends, like how you're like measuring it. I guess there are sacks where like it can be a coverage sack. There's sacks where it can be a game and you come in free, inside. It can be a sack where you're honestly just winning quick off the ball and you would just beat a guy around the edge. So I mean, it just depends how you look at it. Me personally, I feel like if you're making a sack, you're being a playmaker, you're helping the team out. So, I mean, I don't know if I can agree with that narrative for sure.
Yeah, I love that talk because you agree with it in theory, but every year you look at like the top 5 guys in sacks, total pressures, pressure rate, and it's all like the same guys, So like if there's smoke, there's fire. It's not, people can call it an overrated stat. It doesn't really make any sense to me. But
100%.
I would say more. What about pressures, Nito? From your standpoint, obviously, when I'm watching tape, like I'm not I'm not all like I know when you guys are probably watching tape of pass rushers, it's like you guys are keeping an eye on like pressure and stuff. Do you think pressures are like as impactful as the media kinds of like
I
portrays them?
No, I think the media puts way too much stock in the pressures, to be honest. Because, I mean, if you're just looking at it, like a lot of these guys, when they're getting their pressures, let's say they make an inside move, yeah, they win on the inside and they get the pressure, but now the quarterback escapes on the outside and he's running for 15 yards down the field. Not to call anybody out, but like literally just the first game of the season with Herbert versus the Chiefs. I mean, that's the first example that comes to my head when I think of something like that. So I mean, yeah, I mean it's nice to have pressures throughout the game. You obviously want to pressure the quarterback as much as you can, but I mean, I don't think a lot of people take into account like the results of some of those plays that happen.
Well, speaking of that, you guys have. Well, actually, I should be asking fucking Justin about these. With all due respect, I mean, this guy's the sack guy now. What is it? 2 games, 2 sacks. I
The
think.
leading sack guy in the Denver Broncos right now,
I
Just
mean, I know that's what I'm saying. I'm not calling
just
Justin
anyone out
just
here, but
Sinnott.
just trying to get some of that Nito cash, just trying to get something.
the numbers don't lie. They're definitely not an overrated stat on this
We got
podcast.
to be
I'll
able
say
to
that.
afford an upgraded podcast platform. That takes expenses.
That's now 3 more sacks, and we got a new studio on your dime. But speaking of team defense leading to these things, you guys have Pat Surtain on your team, the reigning defensive player of the year. I feel like for your position, right, as was an outside linebacker, as I just found out, but you guys really affect each other, right? Because you could have a sack because he locked someone up. You could have a pressure, which leads to him having an easier time. What is it like having a corner like that, right? I think he became the highest paid corner in the history of the NFL last year. Again, won the defensive player of the year, which is a very rare thing for a cornerback. What is it like having that, knowing that you have that guy back there? What is that like, kind of relief like having a player like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's big, and I'm pretty sure you can ask anybody on the defense, and they'll tell you the type of impact he has. I mean, weekly, we're always like, hey, like, go guard the best receiver, and then we don't ever hear from him the rest of the game. So, I mean, that in itself is impressive, but I mean, just being able to have a guy that can give us as a D line time to go back there and try to get the quarterback pressure, sack the guy, and him just being able to take away one side of the field, it does wonders for a defense. So, I mean, I think people kind of just underrate like that part of his game so much. But trust me, I appreciate it as a guy that's rushing the passer. So
Who is the best player you've played against? Is there, it could be a tackle or anything else? Has there been a guy? I mean, I'm sure you face guys like that every week, but has there been a guy that stood out, was like, this is the best guy I've faced? Or do you not want to give that away? That's
no,
fine if
I
you.
give it away. I don't really care. But I mean, one-on-one matchup, I'll probably say like Rashawn Slater was probably the best guy I faced. He was like a much shorter guy than like a lot of the tackles in the league, and but he's also so strong and he's able to move quickly. So I mean, he was a tougher matchup for me just because he had like everything in his game. But as far as like the best player I played against, probably like Lamar Jackson was probably the best guy for sure.
So you were voted the 38th best player in the NFL last year. So another interesting question I have as a fan. Obviously, that's a great honor, right? I'll be the first to say congratulations. But does that stuff matter to you? I know, like, the media giving you any award maybe lessens a little bit, but those are the guys that you're playing against, right? So I feel like that list from the outside in, people kind of invalidate it sometimes, say it doesn't matter. But in my opinion, like the guys you're playing against, that's the opinion that matters, right? Like you calling out saying Lamar and Slater, like I feel like that's extremely high praise coming from someone who plays against them. What does that list mean anything to you? Does getting voted does that mean anything to you, knowing that it's the guys that you're playing against and not some bum like me who lives in their mom's basement, allegedly?
Nah, bro. I mean, I mean, it is pretty cool. Like, just being able to like see the players that are like high up in rank in the league, and them just being able to talk about you and acknowledge how your game and stuff like that. And I felt like that was probably the most cool part about it. Not necessarily even the ranking, but just the amount of peers in the league that think highly of me and that just see me as as a good player in this league. So.
How was obviously last year was your first time being a Pro Bowler? What was the Pro Bowl like as an experience? Was that pretty cool?
Yeah, I'm about to say it's more like a vacation than anything, bro. I mean, like they'll probably ask you to do like football stuff 2 3 hours about like throughout the day, and then the rest of it's like you're just hanging out with your family. You're going to the theme parks in Orlando, so I was out like damn near the theme parks every day, like for like the whole day. So I mean, it was pretty cool. It was more of like a vacation type than anything.
That's
What
sick.
is there even a game anymore? Right? Isn't it just like capture the flag and dodgeball? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, so
Like flag football.
yeah, that Sunday I believe was the flag football game, and like they had like a couple of different other things for like the O lineman and D lineman, like the tug of war and like some other stuff. I forgot, obstacle course. And then Friday was like the skills challenge where they do like the relay race, dodgeball, a bunch of other stuff. So I mean, it was like pretty like fun for those parts of it for sure.
Is that something that you like do once and you're done with? Because I know a lot of guys turn it around. Like, if you get voted again this year, will you head back?
Most definitely, I'm using that free vacation anytime I get if I could go back. So.
I
For
love it.
sure.
I've heard you talk a lot about Von Miller, and not trying to gas you up, but it's hard not to see the similarities with that first step. Obviously, both repping the orange, the cream orange as well. Pause on that. But other than Von Miller, I know you've spoken about the influence that he has on your game. Are there any other guys growing up that you've tried to take stuff from and kind of add into your toolbox? Whether that's someone that was a vet on your team when you were younger or coming through college, high school? Any guys that you grew up watching that you tried to replicate your game after?
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple guys, and I kind of looked at it as guys that like kind of fit into the mold of me. Were like, not necessarily a huge, edge rusher, but a guy that is fast, undersized a little bit, and that can just do a lot on the game. And obviously, you talk about Von Miller, but there's other guys too I watched, like Clay Matthews, Frank Clark in Seattle when he was there. I'm trying to think, Cliff Averill when he was in Seattle, I watched him a lot. So I mean, a lot of those guys were a lot of those speedy guys off the edge that can do multiple moves and stuff like that. So I probably watch them a lot for the most part too.
And what about guys playing now? I know you mentioned Micah Parsons, but like, are there any guys that you watch and like, that jump off the film to you? Any other edge rushers, outside linebackers that like you really like watching?
Yeah, Micah's obviously at the top of the list. I mean, you're talking about another guy. Brian Burns is a guy I watch a lot. Jonathan Grenard, a guy that I seen early in his career, and I liked his game and stuff like that. I'm trying to think who else.
He's
Shit.
smiling because I told him about John Grenard a couple of years ago. Before
He's
Grenard
lying,
is a
bro.
paid player for the Vikings. Shout
That
out to
didn't
my boy.
happen.
Shout out to
He's
my boy
lying, right, bro?
JG.
That didn't
He's lying,
happen.
bro. He tries to
Listen,
take
shout
credit
out to
for
my boy
everything.
I
JG
know
if he
that's what
sees
he
this.
does, dude.
But he didn't know too much about Grenard's game until I kind of put him on. If that's
Bro,
what I'm trying to say.
Nick and I have been watching Grenard film long before you came into
Thank
the
you, bro.
equation,
I
bro.
came in the
So
film watching the Grenard, and he's like, "Oh, like he's actually pretty good." Like, no
that's
shit, yeah.
yeah, fucking this fucking guy, dude. What else is new?
I can't.
I think you guys have the best division in football. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs, they've come out of the AFC the last 3 years, won a couple of Super Bowls. Does that add like an extra element? Obviously, we're on the verge of a dynasty these last couple of years, but like the Chargers look great. The Raiders made some offseason additions, and they should be a lot better this year. Does that add a little extra pressure when you know that, though you got 6 tough games in your division, you got one of the toughest schedules in the league, one of the toughest divisions? Is that like a little bit of an added pressure? And especially knowing you got to face the Chiefs a couple times a year. And, if you want to get over that hump, get to the Super Bowl, get out of the AFC, you kind of got to go right through them. So what is that like, having to face them a couple times a year?
Yeah, man. Obviously, those type of battles. Obviously, when you talk about the Raiders, the guys that they've added this year, they're going to be a really good team. They gave us a couple good games last year as well. So I mean, they're continuously even trying to get better. The Chargers, they beat us both times last year, and obviously with Harbaugh's doing, they're continuously trying to get better as well. I mean, obviously the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Somebody in the division that has been running it for the past I don't know how many years. So. I mean, they're going to be a challenge in itself always. So, it's going to be a great, year just to go against all those guys. And it's going to be very competitive. So, but we'll always have a good game plan. It's just about, just going out there, trying to win the division. That's it.
Your first year, you played for Nathaniel Hackett. Again, that year didn't go so well, one and done. Sean Payton comes in, a Super Bowl winning head coach, one of the best coaches of the last 20, 25 years. What is that guy like? What changed from year one to year two to you? And then obviously, got the ball rolling pretty quickly. What is Sean Payton like as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the media kind of portrays him as like this I don't know, this mean, like old school head coach when he's actually pretty chill. Like for the most part, he's pretty funny. Always trying to tell little dad jokes in the team meeting and stuff. But I mean, as far as like the culture that he's brought in, since day one, it's total 180 from my year one, there. So I mean, obviously he's doing, his thing, and we've only gotten better every year that he's been here. So we're hoping to take that next step again this year, just keep buying into what he's doing.
All right, Justin, you got anything?
Nah, Nito, appreciate you coming on, bro.
Sir, appreciate y'all boys.
Yeah, bro, appreciate it. Best of luck this year. You guys have the best fucking defense in the NFL. So if we don't fucking win some games this year, I'm going to be very
We got
upset.
y'all. We got you, bro. We got you.
Let's go. All right, man. Thank you. I appreciate